All right, so the real number system. Real number system starts with natural numbers, and these are things that appear in nature. If you walk outside, you'll see one, maybe two, three animals walking around. You don't see half an animal walking around. That would not be natural. So that's why we call them natural numbers. They appear in nature. Then after that, you can kind of think of it as, oh, now they discovered nothing. They discovered zero. So now we have to call these numbers something else. And they're called now whole numbers. So if you take all the natural numbers, you now put a zero in front, they're now called whole numbers. Well, then they discovered the negatives. But this is not the true progression. I'm just giving you like a little pattern with our number system. So now you take the negatives and you put those in front, and now they're called integers. So all the natural numbers are whole numbers, and all the whole numbers are integers. And then all of a sudden, here come partial numbers like fractions and decimals that repeat and end. Those are called rational numbers. So if you take all the integers, you put some fractions and rationals in there, a lot of them, we now classify those as rational numbers. So that's the progression so far. You had the naturals, you throw on zero, they're now called whole. You throw on the integers, they're now called throw on the negatives, they're now called integers. Throw on the fractions and the decimals, the repeating and ending decimals, they're now called rational. Well, if something is not rational, we call it, you guessed it, irrational. And that's the numbers that do not repeat, they do not end. That we don't really exactly know where to put these, right? You cannot exactly place them somewhere on a number line because they do not repeat, they do not end. So they're irrational. We call them like our radicals. If you had square root of 3 or square root of 2, these are irrational numbers, or pi. There's no pattern to them. Okay, so now if you take all the rational and all the irrational, the rational and the irrational, put them together, they're now called real numbers. And that's our number system. So you take the naturals, that's our counting numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, throw a 0 on it, it's now called a whole number. Throw some negatives, negative whole numbers, they're called integers. Put in some fractions and repeating or ending decimals, those are called rational. Take the rational and all the non-repeating or ending decimals, irrationals, put them together and you get the real numbers. So that's everything. Alright, another way to look at it as a picture, if you took the number 2, that's a counting number. Number 2 is a counting number. You can also call it a whole number because the whole numbers include all the counting numbers. You could also call it an integer because the integers include all the wholes and the counting. You could also call it a rational number, and you can also call it a real number. So the number 2 is a counting number, a whole number, an integer, a rational number, and a real number. The one thing it is not is irrational. Number 2 is a nice rational number. Okay, so let's look at these again. I have a set of numbers up here, and we're going to place them where they're supposed to be. So of these numbers, which ones are wholes? Well, 2 is solid. It's a nice whole. 3 is a whole number. We also need the number 0. Remember, the wholes start with 0. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Alright, integers. Well, we already know that all of our whole numbers are integers. But we can also now include the negative whole numbers. So that one right there, the negative one. And that is all the integers. Alright, irrational. Irrational are our radicals and our pi's, the numbers that do not repeat or end. So if you just go through them, that one ends, it ends, it ends, it ends, repeats, ends. Does not repeat or end. That's the radical. And then pi as well. That's irrational. And then we know for rational, rational is all the numbers that are not irrational. So 2, 3, negative 1, 0.5, 234.12 with the repetition, and 0. Those are all of our rational numbers. And then real, well, that's all of them. And that's it. That's our real number system.